After 30 years of delivering babies and sitting with families through their darkest hours, I have learned something that no medical textbook ever taught me. The smallest hearts often teach us the biggest lessons about strength. I have seen mothers walk through fire for children they had not even held yet. I have watched women endure pain that would break anyone, and somehow, they keep going. Not because they are superheroes, but because something happens inside a woman the moment she knows she is carrying a life. Something shifts. A door opens in her heart that can never fully close again. And sometimes, that door leads her through a journey no one should have to walk alone. There was one case that still sits with me differently than all the others. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see her face. A young woman who came to my clinic on a rainy Tuesday morning. She was barely 24 weeks pregnant, but she was walking like someone carrying the weight of the world inside her ribcage. Her hands were wrapped around her belly, not gently like most mothers do, but tight. Protective, like she was afraid something would slip away if she let go even for a second. I noticed that immediately. You learn to see these things after years of watching women enter your examination room. The way she held herself told me she had already known loss. The way she avoided my eyes told me she was used to bad news. Her name was Ember. She was 31 years old. And she was terrified. I invited her to sit down, and she lowered herself onto the chair slowly, carefully, like even that small movement might disturb something fragile inside her. Her husband waited outside. She had asked him to stay in the waiting area. That was another sign. Women who bring their husbands into the room are usually hopeful. Women who leave them outside are usually preparing for something painful. I did not push her. I just waited. Sometimes the most important thing a doctor can do is sit in silence and let a woman find her own words. And when Ember finally looked up at me, her eyes were already wet. She did not cry. She just whispered something I will never forget. She said, "Doctor, I think my body is giving up on this baby again." I asked Ember what she meant by again, even though I already had a feeling I knew the answer. She took a long breath and told me about the 2 miscarriages. The first one happened at 12 weeks. She said she had just started telling her family, just started allowing herself to imagine a nursery and tiny clothes, when the bleeding started on a Sunday morning. The second one was earlier, only 9 weeks, but she said that one hurt differently because by then she had stopped trusting her body completely. She looked at me and said, "Doctor, after the second loss, I told my husband I never wanted to try again. But then something changed inside me. A year passed and I could not stop thinking about the baby I never got to hold. So we tried one more time. And here I am." She was 24 weeks and 3 days along. I asked her when she first noticed something felt wrong. She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. Women know their bodies. They know when something is off. But fear makes them quiet. Fear makes them hope that if they ignore the warning signs long enough, the signs will just go away. Ember finally admitted she had been feeling tightening in her lower abdomen for 3 days. Not constant, she said. Just every few hours. And yesterday it started coming more often. She did not call anyone. She did not want to seem dramatic. She just kept rubbing her belly and telling herself it was normal stretching. I asked her to lie down so I could examine her. The moment my hand touched her abdomen, I felt it. Her uterus was hard. Too hard. And it was not relaxing the way it should between contractions. I kept my face calm because that is what we are trained to do, but inside, my mind was already moving fast. This was not normal stretching. This was preterm labor. I looked at Ember, and she was watching my face like a prisoner watching a judge. She knew. She had known before she even walked into my clinic. She was just waiting for me to say it out loud. I sat down next to her instead of behind my desk. Sometimes you have to close the distance between doctor and patient, literally, so they know you are not just giving them medical facts. You are giving them yourself. I told Ember that she was experiencing preterm labor. Her body was trying to deliver this baby much too early. I explained that at 24 weeks, a baby's lungs are not fully developed. Their skin is still paper thin. They cannot regulate their own body temperature. The medical world has come so far, but there are still limits. I did not hide any of this from her. She deserved the truth. And the truth was that we had to act fast if we wanted to give this baby a fighting chance. Ember did not scream. She did not cry loudly or collapse. That is what stayed with me. She just pressed both hands against her belly and closed her eyes. Her lips moved but no sound came out. I realized later she was praying, not asking for an easy path, just asking for strength to walk the hard one. When she opened her eyes, she looked at me and said, "Doctor, I have lost 2 babies already. I cannot lose this one. My heart will not survive another goodbye." And I believed her. There is only so much loss a person can absorb before something inside them cracks permanently. I explained what needed to happen next. She needed to be admitted to the hospital immediately. We would give her medications to try to stop the contractions. We would give her steroid injections to help speed up the baby's lung development in case the birth could not be stopped. And we would monitor her and the baby around the clock. I told her that some women respond well to treatment. Some do not. There was no way to know yet. I asked her if she understood. She nodded. Then she asked me to call her husband inside. And when he came in, a simple man with worry carved into his forehead, Ember took his hand and said something I will never forget. She said, "Our daughter is fighting to stay inside me. So now we fight too." The hospital room was small, but it became Ember's whole world for the next 2 weeks. Machines beeped and wires connected her belly to a fetal monitor that tracked every single heartbeat of her unborn daughter. That sound, that steady whoosh whoosh whoosh, became the most important sound in the room. Every time the monitor picked up a contraction, the line on the paper would spike upward, and everyone in the room would hold their breath. Ember learned to read that machine faster than some of my junior nurses. She would watch the paper rolling out, and she knew before anyone else when a contraction was coming. She told me once that she started talking to her baby during those moments. She would whisper, "Stay inside, little one. Just a few more days. Just a few more weeks. I am not ready to let you go yet." Her husband slept on a small plastic chair every night. He did not complain once. He brought her food she could not eat and held her hand during contractions that made her whole body tense up like a rope about to snap. But the hardest moments were the quiet ones. The middle of the night when the hospital felt empty, and the only sounds were the monitors and the distant squeak of nursing shoes on the hallway floor. Ember told me later that those hours were when fear attacked her the most. During the day she could be brave. But at 3 in the morning, alone with her thoughts and her fragile belly, she would imagine every terrible possibility. She would imagine holding a baby who was not breathing. She would imagine leaving the hospital with empty arms again. She said she started keeping a small photo of her 2 miscarried babies in her pocket. Not to make herself sad, but to remind herself why she had to keep fighting. On the 5th day, the medications seemed to be working. The contractions slowed down. Ember allowed herself to hope a little. She asked me if she could go home. I told her not yet. And I was right to say no, because on the night of day 6, everything changed. The medications that had been holding back the contractions suddenly stopped working. There is no gentle way to say this. No soft medical phrase that makes it easier to hear. One moment Ember was resting, and the next moment her body clenched with a contraction so strong that she cried out and grabbed the bed rails. I was called in at 2 in the morning. When I walked into her room, I could see it on her face. She knew, the same way a sailor knows when the sea has turned against them. She looked at me and said, "Doctor, the medicine is not working anymore, is it?" It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. And I could not lie to her. I shook my head and told her we were running out of options to stop this labor. I examined her and found that her cervix had begun to open. Not much yet, but enough to know that her body had made a decision. The baby was coming, whether we were ready or not. Ember was only 26 weeks and 3 days pregnant. That is incredibly early. At that stage, a baby's chance of survival is real, but it comes with so many risks. Breathing problems, brain bleeds, infections, vision issues. I explained all of this to Ember and her husband while the monitor beeped in the background, and another contraction built in her belly. Her husband put his head in his hands, but Ember just nodded. She had been preparing for this moment since she walked into my clinic. She asked me only one question. She said, "Doctor, will my baby feel pain when she is born?" I told her honestly that premature babies feel everything, but that we would do everything possible to protect her and keep her comfortable. Ember closed her eyes and said, "Then I need you to promise me something. Promise me you will talk to her. Even if she cannot understand, tell her her mother loves her. Tell her to fight." I made that promise, and I kept it. The contractions came faster after that. What had been every 20 minutes became every 10, then every 5, then every 2. Ember stopped talking between them because there was no time. Her body was done waiting. I called the NICU team and told them to prepare for an extreme premature birth. They arrived within minutes, a team of 4 with a portable incubator and bags of equipment I knew by heart, but still dreaded seeing. Tubes so small they looked like threads. A breathing mask smaller than a playing card. Everything designed for a baby who should still be safe inside her mother for 3 more months. Ember watched them set up and I saw her face change. The fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Something harder. She turned to her husband and said, "You go with the baby. Wherever they take her, you go. Do not leave her side." He nodded, unable to speak. The delivery room was bright and cold, and exactly like every other delivery room I had worked in for 30 years. Except this time my hands were shaking a little. I did not let anyone see, but I felt it, because I knew what was coming. I had seen premature births before. I had held babies no bigger than my palm. But every single time, it hits you. The smallness of them. The way their chests heave, because their lungs are not ready for air. Ember pushed when her body told her to push. She did not scream. She made a low sound instead, deep in her throat, like an animal protecting her young. And then at 3:47 in the morning, her daughter came into the world. She was so small. I cannot describe it properly. If you have never seen a 26-week baby, your mind cannot create the picture. Her skin was translucent, almost purple, because the layers of fat that protect a full-term baby had not formed yet. Her eyes were fused shut. Her hands were tiny, curled into fists no bigger than my thumbnail. And she did not cry. That was the worst part. The silence. The NICU team moved instantly, wrapping her in plastic to keep warmth in, placing a mask over her face to push air into lungs that did not want to open. I looked at Ember. She was watching everything, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. And then after what felt like forever, a sound. Not a real cry. Something smaller. A whimper. A squeak. But it was something. It was life. That tiny sound changed everything in the room. It was not loud. It was not strong. But it was there, and that was enough. The NICU team worked quickly, wrapping the baby in warm plastic, placing a tiny hat on her head to preserve heat, and connecting her to a breathing machine that would do the work her own lungs could not yet manage. I watched as they slipped an 4-line into a vein so small I could barely see it. Every movement was careful, precise, like handling something that might shatter. And the whole time, the baby's heart monitor beeped. Slow at first, then steadier, then strong enough that everyone in that room exhaled without realizing they had been holding their breath. Ember was still on the delivery table, exhausted and trembling. She kept trying to lift her head to see her daughter, but her body had nothing left to give. Her husband stood frozen near the door, his face pale, his hands pressed together like he was still praying. I walked over to Ember and told her the baby was alive and breathing with support. I told her the next hours would be critical, but that her daughter had made it through the birth. That alone was a miracle. Ember grabbed my wrist with a grip that surprised me. She said, "Did you see her hands? Did you see her fingers? She was moving them. She was moving her little fingers." I had not noticed. In all the chaos, I had been looking at monitors and vitals and tubes. But Ember had been looking at her daughter. Really looking. And she had seen what mattered. The NICU team rolled the incubator past Ember's bed, so she could see her baby one more time before they took her to the intensive care unit. Ember reached out and touched the plastic wall of the incubator. She could not hold her daughter. Not yet. Maybe not for weeks. But she pressed her palm against the warm plastic and whispered something only the baby could hear. Then the team left, rolling the tiny incubator down the bright hospital hallway, and Ember was alone in the delivery room with nothing but the memory of that small cry and the emptiness in her arms. Ember could not walk to the NICU for 3 days. Her body needed time to recover from the delivery, but her heart refused to wait. She asked me every single morning, sometimes every single hour, when she could see her daughter. I had to explain that she needed to heal first, that she needed to rest, that the baby was stable but fragile and the NICU had strict rules about who could enter and when. None of my explanations made her feel better. I could see it in her eyes. Every hour she spent away from that baby felt like a betrayal. She told me once, "Doctor, my daughter is fighting for her life in a plastic box and I am lying in a clean bed eating hospital food. It does not feel right. Nothing about this feels right." On the 4th day, I walked with her to the NICU for the first time. It was the longest walk I have ever seen anyone take. The hallway was maybe 50 meters. But for Ember, each step seemed to cost her something. She was still sore, still weak, still carrying the weight of everything that had happened. I stayed beside her, but I did not hold her arm. She wanted to do this alone. When we reached the NICU doors, she stopped. She looked at me and said, "What if she does not know who I am? What if she cannot feel me through the incubator?" I told her the truth. Babies know their mothers. Not by sight, by sound, by smell, by the rhythm of the heartbeat they listen to for 26 weeks. Your daughter knows you, Ember. She has always known you. The NICU was quieter than I expected. Just the soft beeping of monitors, and the whoosh of ventilators, and the occasional cry from a baby somewhere in the corner. Ember's daughter was in incubator number 7. The nurse pointed her there, and Ember walked forward slowly, her hands reaching out before she even saw the baby clearly. And then she stopped in front of the clear plastic box and looked inside. Her daughter weighed less than 900 grams. She was covered in tubes and wires and tape. Her eyes were still closed. Her chest moved up and down with the help of a machine. Ember stood there for a long time without speaking. Then she touched the small round port hole on the side of the incubator. She slipped her finger inside. And that tiny baby, that fragile girl who could not yet breathe on her own, wrapped her entire hand around her mother's finger and held on. The NICU is not a place of straight lines. It is a place of steps forward and steps backward, sometimes in the same hour. Ember learned this faster than most mothers. On the 6th day, her daughter developed an infection. Her temperature rose. Her breathing became more labored. The doctors started antibiotics immediately and increased the support from the ventilator. Ember sat by the incubator and watched her daughter's tiny chest heave with every breath the machine pushed in. She asked me if the baby was in pain. I told her we were doing everything to keep her comfortable. That was not the answer Ember wanted, but it was the only answer I had. The infection set them back by 2 weeks. Just when the baby started gaining a few grams, her oxygen levels would drop. Just when she opened her eyes for the first time, she would have an episode where she forgot to breathe and the alarms would scream and nurses would rush over. Ember stopped sleeping in her own hospital room. She moved a chair next to the incubator and stayed there day and night. Her husband brought her food. She barely ate. The nurses told her to rest. She ignored them. And then something happened that none of us expected. One night, when the baby was having a particularly difficult time, Ember started to sing. A soft lullaby in her native language. Nothing loud or special. Just a melody she remembered from her own childhood. She sang it quietly, her face close to the incubator, her voice a little shaky. The baby's heart rate monitor showed something we had not seen before. The numbers steadied. The alarm stopped. The baby relaxed. The nurses noticed it immediately. They started tracking it. Every time Ember sang, the baby's oxygen saturation improved. Every time Ember spoke, the baby's breathing became more regular. It was not medicine. It was not a machine. It was a mother's voice, the most familiar sound in the world, telling her daughter that she was not alone. One of the senior NICU doctors told Ember that her voice was better than any drug they could give. Ember cried when she heard that. Not because she was sad, because for the first time in weeks she felt useful. She felt like she was not just watching her daughter fight. She was fighting alongside her. 9 weeks in the NICU. That is how long Ember sat in that plastic chair, sang those lullabies, held that tiny finger through the porthole, and waited. 9 weeks of watching her daughter gain grams instead of pounds. 9 weeks of alarms and setbacks and small victories that nobody outside the hospital would understand. But on the morning of the 63rd day, the head NICU doctor came to find Ember with something different on his face. Not the careful, guarded expression he usually wore. Something softer. He said, "Mom, we think it is time to try something. We want to take her off the ventilator and see if she can breathe on her own." Ember told me later that her first reaction was fear. Pure cold fear. The ventilator had been keeping her daughter alive for 9 weeks. What if they removed it and her lungs failed again? What if she stopped breathing in the middle of the night when no one was watching? But she looked at her daughter, who was now big enough to wear a tiny onesie, big enough to open her eyes and look around, big enough to kick her little legs when she heard her mother's voice. And Ember made a decision. She said yes. The extubation took less than a minute. The doctors removed the tube from the baby's throat and waited. Ember held her breath. The baby's chest rose, fell, rose again. No straide, no retracciones. Just the soft rise and fall of a baby breathing room air for the first time in her life. The room was silent except for the baby's small grunts and the sound of Ember crying. She did not try to hide her tears this time. She let them fall. And then she asked the question she had been too afraid to ask for 9 weeks. Can I hold her now? Not through the incubator. Not with a finger through a porthole. Can I hold my daughter against my chest and feel her heartbeat next to mine? The nurses helped Ember into a large chair. They placed the baby, still connected to some monitors but free of the breathing tube, onto her mother's bare chest. Skin to skin. The way nature intended. And the moment that baby felt her mother's warmth, she stopped fussing. She turned her head toward Ember's heartbeat, the same heartbeat she had listened to for 26 weeks in the womb. Ember wrapped her arms around her daughter and closed her eyes. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Every woman in that room understood. This was the moment she had been praying for since the day she walked into my clinic, holding her belly too tight, afraid to hope. Ember's daughter went home 3 weeks later. She was still small, still fragile, still needing oxygen support at night and regular checkups with specialists. But she went home. Ember carried her out of the hospital in a car seat that looked too big for her tiny body, and her husband walked beside her with his hand on her shoulder, and the NICU nurses lined up in the hallway to say goodbye. Some of them were crying. That happens more often than people think. You cannot spend weeks fighting for a baby's life without falling in love with her just a little bit. I stood at the entrance and watched them leave. Ember turned back once and looked at me. She did not say thank you. She did not need to. Her eyes said everything. That was 7 years ago. The little girl is in 1st grade now. She still has some breathing issues during cold season, and she sees a lung specialist every few months. But she reads above her grade level. She loves to draw. And she sings constantly, which makes her mother laugh because Ember cannot carry a tune at all. The lullabies that saved her daughter's life in the NICU came from memory, not from talent. That is the beautiful irony of it. Ember does not think she can sing, but her daughter has never heard a more perfect sound in her entire life. I have delivered thousands of babies in my career. I have seen easy births and hard births and births that broke my heart. But Ember taught me something I carry with me every single day. She taught me that hope is not the absence of fear. Hope is fear that has decided to keep going anyway. She was terrified from the moment she walked into my clinic. She stayed terrified through every contraction, every NICU alarm, every setback. But she never left. She never gave up. She sang lullabies to a baby who could not yet hear. She held a finger through a plastic hole. She showed up every single day, even when showing up was agony. You know, after all these years, I have realized something. Medicine gives us machines and medicines, and all kinds of advanced technology. But a mother's presence, her voice, her touch, those are things no machine can replace. I have seen babies survive against every medical odds simply because their mother refused to stop fighting for them. Not with equipment, with love. So if you are going through something hard right now, whether it is pregnancy or something else entirely, please remember this. You are stronger than you know. And sometimes just showing up and staying present is the greatest miracle of all. Do not underestimate what your heart can do.